Welcome to our channel, where we bring you the most shocking, intense, and dramatic breakdowns of television's darkest turns. Today we dive deep into a story that grips the imagination, a tale that does not let go once it begins unraveling, and the events behind the closed doors of Beyond the Gates. In the suffocating darkness of the warehouse, the cold air pressed against Chelsea's skin, and the heavy scent of damp iron filled her senses as consciousness returned to her in fractured waves. At first, she believed she was alone, a discarded figure abandoned in shadows, but as her blurred vision sharpened, the outlines of two figures emerged. Fear carved itself across her face as the truth settled like ice in her chest. It was not a faceless captor or a nameless stranger watching her. It was Hayley and Allison. The recognition struck her harder than any physical blow. These were not enemies from the outside, not shadows she had been trained to fear, but the very people she had once thought of as allies, companions she trusted, women she believed stood beside her in the chaos that had consumed their lives. Now they were the ones standing in the dim light, silent and unyielding, their presence more terrifying than any stranger could ever be. Panic clawed at Chelsea's throat as her body jerked against the restraints, the rough edges biting into her skin with each desperate movement. She wanted to scream, to demand an explanation, but only broken fragments of breath escaped her lips. The air seemed to tighten around her as she realized that pleading might be useless. Yet instinct kept driving her heart to hammer out silent cries for mercy. The image of Hayley's expressionless stare and Allison's unsettling calm branded themselves into her mind. If they were here, if they were standing in front of her in this abandoned place, then something unthinkable had already been set in motion. The walls of the warehouse seemed to close in, suffocating with the weight of secrets that had been carefully buried. Chelsea's mind raced back through the days that had led here, searching for clues, trying to uncover where trust had shifted into betrayal. She remembered the small glances exchanged between Hayley and Allison, subtle, almost invisible at the time, but now, under the cruel glare of realization, they burned like red flags she had ignored. Every smile, every reassuring word they had once given her transformed in hindsight into calculated layers of deception. It was as if her entire reality had been constructed on a foundation that was crumbling beneath her feet. Hayley's silence carried more menace than any spoken threat. The coldness in her eyes hinted at truths Chelsea was not ready to face, truths that suggested this was no accident or momentary lapse, but something long in the making. Allison stood beside her, poised yet detached, as though this scene had played out in her mind long before Chelsea ever opened her eyes. Their presence was not the reaction of two women stumbling upon a victim, it was the calculated poise of those who had orchestrated the entire situation. And in that instant, Chelsea realized she was not caught in a random act of cruelty. She was trapped inside a plan, a design woven with precision and carried out with devastating intent. The weight of betrayal bore down on her like chains heavier than those binding her wrists. Every memory of shared struggles now twisted into grotesque reminders of manipulation. Perhaps they had never truly been on her side. Perhaps every step, every gesture of kindness had been part of an elaborate performance designed to lead her to this exact moment. The terror of not knowing why, of being unable to piece together the motive behind such a cruel act, gnawed at her sanity. Outside the warehouse, the world continued as though nothing had shifted, yet within those walls the air was suffused with dread. The dim light seeping through cracks in the boards seemed to highlight Chelsea's vulnerability, her body trembling not only from fear but from the dawning comprehension that her fate was no longer her own. Each second ticked by with agonizing slowness, stretching into an eternity where possibilities of what might happen to her splintered into nightmares. Would they silence her forever to protect a secret? Would they use her as leverage in a dangerous game she had unknowingly been pulled into? Or was this about something far more personal, a vendetta hidden behind years of smiles and false assurances? The chill in the room seeped deeper into her bones, but the true cold came from the realization that her captors were not strangers but reflections of her own misplaced trust. She had seen the danger in outsiders, but never had she considered that the most devastating threat would come from within the circle she thought was safe. The betrayal cut deeper than the fear, leaving scars long before any physical wound could be inflicted. Hayley's presence radiated authority, as though she was the architect of the entire ordeal, while Allison's subtle composure suggested complicity without hesitation. Together, they formed a wall of inevitability that Chelsea could not breach. Her mind screamed for escape, for some loophole that could undo the chains of treachery, but every attempt ended in despair. It was as if her cries for help dissolved into the air, absorbed by the silence of the warehouse walls, leaving nothing behind but the echo of her own desperation. Time lost meaning as minutes bled into hours, each moment intensifying the atmosphere of suffocating dread. The shadows lengthened and shifted, twisting into grotesque shapes that mirrored the chaos unraveling within Chelsea's mind. She was no longer certain if she was awake or trapped in a nightmare that had taken on flesh and bone. The boundaries between reality and terror blurred, and yet one truth remained painfully clear: the people she thought she could trust were the very ones who had condemned her. And still, unanswered questions burned hotter than the fear itself. What drove them to this? What secret was so dark, so dangerous, that it demanded Chelsea's silence at such a cost? The silence of her captors only deepened the mystery, each unspoken word thickening the fog of uncertainty that suffocated her. She was trapped not only in a warehouse but inside a web of motives she could not see, a labyrinth with no exit. As the story of Beyond the Gates unfolds, the revelation of Hayley and Allison's betrayal is only the beginning of a descent into darker truths. What lies beyond these walls is a storm waiting to break, where every relationship will be tested, every secret dragged into the light, and every bond corrupted by ambition, fear, and vengeance. This was not merely a kidnapping. It was the spark that would ignite a chain of devastation, unraveling lives and exposing the hidden rot beneath polished facades. Thank you for watching our deep dive into the shocking events behind Beyond the Gates. If you want to continue exploring the most intense twists and darkest revelations, make sure to follow and subscribe to our channel, so you never miss the stories that will leave you breathless.